Hello and welcome to the Capital Playbook. My name is Charles Williams. I am the owner and managing member of Pioneer Realty Capital, and we are very happy to have with us a guest, Ms. Stephanie Dano.
Thank you for having me.
With Origin Bank. Today we're going to talk about the importance of having the right banking relationship, especially if you're an investor and you're trying to grow your wealth, or if you're active in commercial real estate. And we'll talk about how we partnered together and some things that we've done in the past and are looking to do in the future. And we will also discuss how that benefits you as an investor. But before we get started today, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and also turn on the little bell so that you're notified when our new podcast shows come up. Or if you're watching or listening on one of our other channels, such as Apple or Spotify, be sure and subscribe there as well. But with that being said, again, let's welcome Ms. Stephanie Dano.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Stephanie and I have been personal friends for over 8 years. I've followed her as she's gone from different positions at various banks. She's a very accomplished, excellent banker, great relationship manager, does a lot for us. It took her a number of years, but eventually we moved our relationship over to her. But she served us well. She's done a really, really good job with that. But Stephanie, why don't you tell our folks something about you? Give us a little bit of your background.
Absolutely.
How'd you get into the banking world, and just let us know what about you.
I've been in the banking world for about 15 years now, so it's definitely been a nice streak. And what's nice about it is I've been in all different kinds of divisions and different size banks. So I've seen the culture between the large banks, the mid-sized banks, and the community banks, and the difference between those cultures. So it's been kind of a great road, great people, and as big as the banking world is, it's pretty small because you know everybody around, and as well as the client base that's there. But what's nice about it is this is actually one of the smallest banks I've been at. And to see the difference between them and the large banks has been a game changer for me, which has actually been a great game changer. And so I've been in between investment banking, from residential banking to commercial banking and corporate banking. So I've seen all different varieties, from high net worth to ultra high net worth client base. And so it was really nice to have that experience between all those, because you can kind of connect those together. But yeah, so I've been in it for about 15 years. And so the bank currently that I'm at is a relationship centric bank, and by far one of the best ones that I've been at. Yeah,
I would have to agree with that. Again, as I mentioned, we moved our relationships over, and it is because of that. The leadership there at their bank is phenomenal. You can talk to some of the senior people and get things done, and that's important if you're in business. Now, one of the things that we often talk about, Stephanie, here on our show is the capital markets, which and what we mean by the capital markets are where does the money come from,
right,
to participate specifically in real estate transactions. Now, many people have the view that when you need a loan for commercial real estate, the bank is the only source to go
right.
to. With your 15 years of experience and background, give us some insight on that.
It's a false statement, right? Not many people believe that, so they assume the banks, and banks have their own guidelines and ways of transacting, and sometimes the extension of the credit, depending on whether it's a real estate or line, might not be the ideal amount that certain clients are looking for, so they don't really realize any other outside sources. And what's nice about the relationship I've had with you, obviously, is that's not the case. So it's kind of customizing those solutions for some of those clients, and it's a partnership, right? So that's the nice part about it, is the fact that not only are we able to help them on certain transactions, but as well as you. So it's kind of a simultaneous relationship. And that's what I've kind of seen. And, I thought I had a lot of experience in the banking side, but didn't really look at outside other sources that clients can help. And so you kind of brought that uniqueness in, which was very nice, because sometimes those solutions are very different from the other banks that are presenting it. So really, because every bank usually has the same products and services, it's just how you execute them,
Right.
and how you position them in the market. And so looking at it is, banks are only comfortable with certain, amounts, and sometimes it's a little more conservative than others. But to bring a partner like you in and to be able to give the client more financing capabilities that are outside of the banking world has actually been a true accomplishment on both ends. And so, yeah, that's a very different world in the banking versus yours, and it was a great experience learning that in the past 8 years with you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I've learned a lot with you in terms of the various products. And it's interesting, we've been able to kind of marry both together. We have that non-bank financing solutions available, so oftentimes Stephanie will call me and say, hey, this doesn't quite fit our box, nor would it fit most banking boxes, but what can you do?
Right.
And then ultimately we get something done. But we've also have had some transactions where it's just been a matter of structuring the right deal.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you remember the Villa Asuncion.
Yeah. That was something else. That one was one that the client unfortunately was not put in the right position with the bank that they were currently with.
Right.
The swap fees and the unwind fees, and that was actually, I think, one of the first deals we worked on.
So, yeah.
And so it was two older doctors that didn't know where to go in order to kind of get out of the swap rate. And unfortunately, it actually wasn't suitable for them in the beginning to begin with, but the bank that they were with was not my bank, just so you know, didn't do the right thing. And so they had this huge unwind fee. I think it was close to almost $1 million when we looked at it. Yeah. And so from my banking background, when we reviewed it, it just truly did not make sense for the client. Not only to pay the unwind fee, but the rate was going to be a little higher. And so considering their age and how long they wanted to exit, it just didn't make sense. And so, I thought that was going to be a long shot to send it to you, but I'm like, let me just try any other angle, because the one thing about me as far as relationships is if I can't do a deal, I'm not just going to close the door on the client. Right. It's just not the right thing to do. If I can give them other services that are even outside of my world, I'm going to lead that way, because eventually they'll always come back to me for other things or other opportunities or anything I can help with. And I want to be a value, not just a banking value, but also as a personal relationship, because truly those are both together. They're correlation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a mission, but I would like you can let them know how that happened, because I was really impressed with how that transaction went.
Well, we were able to get the deal done, get them out of that horrible loan they were in. I just can't imagine someone in good conscience putting someone in a loan like that. But one of the things that we talk about on this show a lot, and you tell me what you think about this, that when you're involved in commercial real estate, in transactions, either as an owner or an investor, the importance of the role of an advisor before going into that transaction. Now, looking back on that Villa Asuncion deal, had they had a proper third-party advisor advising them, how do you think it would have worked out?
It would have completely changed the game on them. They didn't even know they were in a swap fee.
Right.
That's what the scary part was. It's like the banker that had advised them to get into it didn't even explain the difference. They didn't even realize how they were getting two bills.
Right.
And so I think a third party like yourself went in there, explained what it is, explained the situation, explained the overall outcome of what that position would put them in. Unfortunately, a lot of bankers have a bad reputation for that, and it kind of makes it harder for someone like myself to get out of that perception.
Right.
Because there's a lot of them that don't do the right thing. And so I think a third party would have advised them, would have given them multiple options,
Right.
not just a one way, and kind of forced them into this entry of a swap that didn't make sense and wasn't suitable for them, but would have given them options and told them, this is where you stand, this is the options we have, and this is what the overall objective will be down the road. It's not just kind of a one-stop shop transaction. And so that's what's nice about having the third party, is giving the client options, not just the banking piece, but overall all the other capital markets and funding ways that are available. And so that's why I really valued our relationship. It's because you have other sources and other options that I might not be aware of.
Right.
And so the best thing for the client is to put them in a position where those solutions are customized to that client and not just to the bank.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the reason why, in my experience, that clients end up in loans that really end up costing them in the end, is that when they first go into the transaction, they're in terms of lending, they're focused on one thing.
Which rate, right?
Interest rate. Now, so they got a great interest rate, right?
Right.
But how did it affect their cost of capital?
Oh, huge, huge. That's why you have to educate them.
Right.
And when you don't have that right person to educate them, that's what really is a negative impact down the road, right? They see the rate, they see these terms, they're like, okay, great. Some of them don't notice the prepayment penalties. Some of them don't realize there's a swap. It's a swap fee. There's a swap rate tied into it. And so it's been interesting seeing some of those products and loans that I've come across. And, there's been, Villa came back to me after you did that transaction and said that they never imagined themselves to get out of that.
Yeah.
And because before they came to me, they had probably went to about 4 or 5 banks. Mm-hmm. And when I provide them with your name, at first, of course, everyone's always worried. They're like, well, why it's not a bank? What am I going to do? I'm like, relax. There's other ways of providing financing. Just open up your options. Don't just be closed-minded to one thing.
Yeah.
The rate is not always the most attractive thing. It might actually be the worst thing for you. And so I think educating some of our borrowers to understand that and know that really plays a value in the overall long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And that's why we've been successful at that, because it's not just about us, it's not about what we can offer, but what the client's overall objectives down the road is.
Absolutely, and that's very well stated. In fact, one of the things we do when we first engage a client, if we want to understand their objectives and help them put together a capital acquisition strategy.
Right.
Most investors' capital acquisition strategy only relate to one thing: the interest rate. I want to get the best rate.
Yeah.
That's their whole strategy. And we've seen just horrible things happen.
Sometimes it comes with a price.
It always comes with a price, because the capital markets price capital at the same rate.
Right, yeah.
Ultimately.
That's very true.
Most people don't understand that. I mean, the capital is priced at the same market. Market will tell you what the price.
Yeah.
So if you have a lender whose rate is exceptionally low, you better believe they're making that money up some way. Yeah. And so as a result, people end up in loans. They think they have the best rate. They're the smartest people in town. They got this wonderful rate. But when they go to unwind that loan,
there's the headache and the nightmare that comes with it, and they realize, and unfortunately, they end up paying a bigger price. Absolutely,
they end up paying much more. Yeah. So because they don't understand the overall cost of capital. So, that's that project, and again, we're happy to just really educate people on the fact that there are more capital sources. But in terms of the importance of having the right banking relationship, now I'm going to tell you some things I like about the relationship I have with your bank, but I'd like to just hear you comment on the right relationship and how it can benefit someone versus having the wrong relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
So the right relationship is one where we go in depth into what they have currently, what they're doing as far as not only on the loan side, but on the treasury management solutions and the cash management and their deposits. I'll tell you one scary thing is a lot of people don't even know what kind of services they have. They'll have services that they're not even using on their accounts.
And they're paying for
it. Whether it's lockbox, ACH solutions, deposit, mobile deposits or scanners. It's always coming out on the back end. Sometimes they'll get service charges. So most of them don't realize what they have. And so in order for me to find the right customer, the first thing I'll ask them for is some information on it, whether it's an account analysis statement or their loan statements, just to understand what they have. And the funny thing is about 8 out of 10 times, they'll tell me what they have, but they won't realize there's additional treasuries that are on there. And I'll be like, well, did you know you had lockbox for this charge? And blah, blah. No, what is that? And so it's like, all these things were tagged. And so for me, the right relationship is knowing that my client is educated and understands what they're getting into with me, as well as vice versa, and where their overall objectives and goals are. And so for me, it's understanding what their needs and wants are, not only now, but in the future.
Right.
And if they align with us as well. The bank has their own goals, and so does the client. And most of the time what we're seeing is it's all about the banks. Right? They're doing it for their own bottom line, and that's not how we operate. And so we'll overall look at a client, see what their overall objectives are as far as relationship, loans, what they're planning on doing in the future, if it's real estate, and we customize those solutions, making sure that the products that they have are there and the products that they don't need are not. And the nice part about ours is the turnaround time.
Right.
It's a pain in the butt to leave banks. Like, we completely get it. The client never has to step foot in the bank. They're dealing with us directly. We'll come to them to get everything set up. And you already know from experience, it's less than 24 hours, which is unheard of because I've come from larger banks and mid-sized banks. Unheard of. So that. And then within 72 hours, they'll have everything else from the online banking to the wires to the ACH setup. So it's the white glove service of banking. And I'll be honest to say that this is by far the first time I've ever seen something so quickly set up, because normally it takes banks 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes even longer. So aligning that, setting the right expectations for them, and them setting the right expectations for us. And then the nice part about it is finding the client that's going to grow with us. It's not just a one-stop transaction. They want to grow with the bank. They want to have someone value their relationship as well as we value theirs. So I am open to all kinds of clients. I have manufacturers, wholesalers, healthcare, you name it, commercial real estate developers, and all of them always have projects. And the nice part is we follow the client. So a client has, we're in Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. But if a client has a project in California, we're going to follow that. Most of the banks that I've worked with, they stop at where they are. And so you kind of lose track of that client relationship. So we look for the clients that want to grow with us. And it's not just a transaction, a one-stop transaction. And from our experience with the pandemic and PPP, we were one of the only banks that allowed new clients to come in. Because of larger banks.
We started moving our relationship at that time. And I can tell you what I really enjoy. Our company, we provide financing and arrange financing for commercial real estate projects, but we also develop as well, and we have an investment side of our. So we're always setting up entities and setting up accounts, and because each project has its own business, if you will, and the speed in which you guys are able to execute. I think we set up 2 new accounts this week, right? With projects that we just took on. But even more importantly than that, because of the type of business I'm in, I have to move money quickly. Man, I tell you what, out of the 19 years I've been in business, this is the best relationship I've had in terms of my ability to move money. I can move money between entities. I can move money to clients. It just makes it so easy for me to do it. So, that's why Origin Bank has truly become a partner with us. Not just with us, we've also have brought on clients who we work with to work with Origin because it just makes things that much more seamless.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things. Why do you suppose that's the case? What's behind that philosophy? Is that just a mission of the bank, or?
Every bank can say, we're a relationship centric, and at the end of the day, it's not necessarily their main objective.
Right.
And so here, I'll truly tell you, it is, and that's why I came to this bank, is because I saw previous coworkers that I've worked with move to this bank and tell me, like, Stephanie, it's completely different. This is a bank that truly cares about the client. Mm-hmm. So when I came and saw how they were managing the relationships, I mean, I'll tell you one thing that like sparked surprise to me was our wire cutoffs are 4:30.
Right.
We had a client call us at 4:25 and said, I need to send out a wire. This is immediate. This is urgent. Our wire department stayed till 5 p.m.
Wow.
to get it done. I have never in my 15 years seen that with any bank. Normally they're like, sorry, cut off. It's going to come out tomorrow. They literally stayed to help my client out. And I was just like, wow. They actually really care. They really did care and value how important this client is to me,
right,
and how important this transaction is to him. He is one of many that will call prospects and tell them testimonials about us. That's how he feels about it.
Yeah.
And so the difference is you're not calling the 1-800 numbers. You're calling me. You're texting me.
I'm
you're
calling
texting
yourself.
Susan. Yeah. And we get 7 a.m.,
right,
6 a.m., 8 p.m. We've done all different hours, and that's what separates me. It's not a 9 to 5 job. Doesn't work that way. Businesses don't stop 9 to 5.
Right.
And so I follow the client. The client needs, one of the doctors needed a call yesterday at 6 p.m. And Courtney was like, is it okay to do after banking hours? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, if you need 7 o'clock, let him do 7 o'clock. That's just how I like to operate, and that's how my team likes to operate. Right. And that's what I love about it, is we all have the same kind of mindset when it comes to it. And so it's not calling the 1-800 number. You're texting me. And the nice part about our kind of the way that we've set up everything is I'm not the only one that gets that message. It's my treasury officer, my back end. So if I'm not there in that next 30 minutes, they are on the back end of everything. I mean, I've come in and, been in a meeting and come out of a meeting, and they've taken care of 2 items that have been there. And so that's what's nice about it, is we just have this clean way of aligning ourselves in order to help the clients.
Yeah.
And that's what separates it. And the 1-800 numbers are not your first call.
Yeah, I didn't even know you had a 1-800 number.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need it to know it. Right. That's what we're here for.
I just sent you a text. But another thing that's important to understand is oftentimes people think that when you're working with a company like ours, it's mutually exclusive. Either you're working with the bank or you're working with Pioneer Realty Capital. But what's unique about our relationship is we work together.
Right.
So she has, their bank has, as she mentioned before, transactions that they can't do. Most banks send those folks, hey, we can't do it.
Just go figure it out.
Just go figure it out. Stephanie calls me and says, hey, we can't do this deal, but let's figure out how we can help this client. And, of course, we have that access to the insurance companies, the pension funds, the private debt funds, the real estate investment trusts. We have those non-bank solutions that we can bring into these transactions, to make sure that your relationship with that client stays intact.
Yes.
And that's the unique advantage that this type of relationship brings. And it's important that if you are in commercial real estate or just in banking in general, you interview the bank who you're dealing with to see if they have that interest in making sure there's a solution for whatever challenge that you might have. If you're working with a bank and you can't even find the person to ask that question to,
then you have a problem.
You're probably at the wrong bank. Right?
Or they don't respond, or the lack of communication, or the turnaround time. You've seen it all the time where Client goes, presents something to a bank. Banker is like, oh, get me this. Oh, get me this other document. And then silence. And now the customer's like, okay, what's going on? Reaching out, and then takes 30, 40 days for them to say, sorry, we can't do this.
Now that was actually going to be my next question. And I know that if you are a borrower and have ever, because I've seen people come to me after being disgusted with a bank, right?
Oh, I'm sure I've seen horror stories.
Why do banks they look at a deal, they know they can't do the deal. Like, let's say if a person's going to build apartments, right? And this is a consumer bank, right? Only do consumer loans. Don't do commercial real estate loans. Now, most people don't realize that not all banks do all types of loans.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. But let's just say Johnny Investor, he shows up and he's going to go to the bank he's been banking with for 15 years. He knows Banker Bob well. Banker Bob has provided him a car loan, provided him a loan to expand his house, all those great things. They have a great relationship. He's got a bunch of money over at that bank. Now, Investor Bob wants to build some apartments. He goes to this bank, and what unfortunately do a lot of banks do when that happens? They take the application. What else?
Sit on it for a while, come back to the client and tell them, okay, we can do this, we can do that, maybe present a term sheet. And then as they're kind of already 30, 40 days in, trying to go through underwriting, it's like, oh, okay, we don't do this. Well, why? We're not in this space. Well, why did you waste my time? And so that at that point, you've got that angry, disgruntled client who assumes now every single bank is like that.
Right.
And so now
or they think that their loan is not fundable.
Yes.
They're like, oh, I can't get a loan. Well, what makes you think that? Well, because my bank told me I don't qualify.
But they're not in the space of commercial and they don't understand it. I mean, and some of these banks are maybe trying to figure it out.
Right.
And unfortunately, I don't want to say you're the casualty in it, right, but it ends up being the case. And so that's where I've seen a lot of that. Actually, I've seen it recently with a lot, especially with some of the banks merging,
right, and
the culture changing. And so, yeah, that comes across where they're like, okay, well, now they're coming to me and they're like, okay, well, I can't, have 30, 40 days. We come back in 4, less than that, maybe. Right. And that's being conservative. Normally, sometimes it's the next day. Right. And we're not going to waste their time. We'll tell them, this is, these are the issues we see. Mm-hmm. We need to fix this in order for this to be presentable. And the nice part is our chief credit officer is in our same location. So it's not like you have to go through layers. I can go directly to him and just itemize what needs to be done, how we can fix this, if we need to bring someone else in. And so when some of the clients come to us after dealing with those banks, it's almost like a kind of a huge weight lifted off of them, because A, the first they thought they're not bankable. Right. B, they think this deal is not bankable. But that's not the case. It's just the structure and understanding certain things. And a lot of bankers, unfortunately, some of them either don't dig deeply because they just see a certain deal like, oh, okay, we can't do it. But, let's just wait a couple weeks. Let's get more information.
And then turn it down.
And then turn it down. Right. So it's like they don't want to go through the same process. And what's nice is we give them a different viewpoint in the beginning of it. Yeah. How long do you plan on having this for? Mm-hmm. What's your overall objective?
What's your exit strategy?
Yeah, what's your exit strategy? So now you're learning what their end result is and what they're looking for, and are you trying to, get more loans or buildings down the road? People don't ask those. They're too focused on the present deals without understanding, because, again, they need to align with the bank as well as the client needs to align with us as well. So
and a lot of people don't spend any time interviewing their banks. It's amazing that you're going to put all of the thing that represents your worth and your value in this relationship, which is your money. But you don't spend a whole lot of time questioning them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. Now, they question me when they come.
Yeah,
right?
They dig deep.
They have a whole lot of questions for me. but when they go to that bank,
they have none.
They don't have any questions. It's like, well, your money's much better with me than it is sometimes with them. So, but it's an interesting. That's why it's an important mission of mine. To really educate people about the capital markets, how it all works, because there's a perception of how it works,
right?
And that's different from the reality. Not all banks are the same.
No.
And you're not going to get the same type of service. Banks are limited in what they can do. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
They're governed by the federal government. Why? Well, they get free money in the terms of deposits. And then they turn around and they can lend that money out. So if you don't regulate that, then we've seen some things that have happened when that's
banks.
Left unregulated. So there are just certain things that banks can't do. It's not that they don't want to do them. They just can't do it because the federal government says you can't do that with free money.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And that's why you need the rest of the capital markets to kind of round out some of those other things that a bank would never do. A bank is never going to make an 85% bridge loan on a non-stabilized asset.
No.
Right?
No, and that's every single bank. Yeah, I don't think you'll see that. That will be like an audit issue.
Somebody's going to jail if a bank does that deal, right? But those deals get done, but they get done by the other part of the capital market.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about it is it's not out there, not many people. And, there's a lot of educated commercial real estate developers. They know the market, but then
they don't understand
it. And so it puts our position in a unique position, because with having you, it changes what we can do. Mm-hmm. And the nice part is I get the deposits.
Right.
But they still continue to work with me as they're continuing to work with you.
Right.
And so they still have the relationship with me and the relationship with you. Mm-hmm. And so they can also grow that way. And, most of our business has been largely organic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been people referring and saying, this is what they did.
Yeah.
And so it's been a fourfold over the past 10 years almost with what I've been doing. It's largely organic.
Yep.
And that's the nice part about it, is because that's how you want it to be, is test your own client testimonials.
Absolutely. And our relationships have expanded beyond Dallas. We have relationships in Houston, and Origin Bank is a partner of ours as we do our own development. And what's interesting, I was talking to Stephanie about a deal we're looking to do here, and Stephanie told me in 30 seconds, said, well, I can't do that. I'm going to tell you, a quick no is better than a slow yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so, and I told her, said, well, don't worry about it. I know, I'm trying to do you a favor.
Yeah, it was appreciative, but I'd rather tell you up front than,
exactly, than to waste my time.
Try it with your banker typical, let me look and I'll get back to you.
But, that's also a testament to your professionalism in that you know your product.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the advantages of being with a smaller bank. When I say small, you guys have what?
We're about $7.5 billion in assets right now.
That's pretty small. $7.5 billion. That's pretty good.
It's getting bigger. We'll be jumping to $50 billion soon.
Wow, that's not too small in my book, right? But $7 billion in assets.
Yeah.
You have branches throughout
all of DFW market, but we have about 44 branches between Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. The nice part about ours is we love everything to be technology based. I mean, because these days a lot of people don't go to the branch. It's an inconvenience. So we have certain features that even some of the larger banks don't have, which is crazy. Mobile deposits, any limit that they want. And
sending wires,
man, limits.
It's phenomenal. And if you're in my business and you got to move money, their wire service is great.
It's kind of funny. I just got off a client before we did this, and they're trying to wire money from their bank to ours, and it's a significant amount. It's about $5 million, and they're having to wait 4 days to get approval for the wire increases when we do it less than an hour.
Right.
And even if they need temporary ones. And so I'm like, this is a large bank. Like, really? You can't just reach out to your banker? And they're like, he hasn't even reached out back to us. I'm like, you guys have $20 million sitting in a bank. And that's how long it's taking for them to respond to you about it. And to me, that's just shocking, because to them that's normal.
Right.
And so it blows my mind because now that they have their relationship, they've been here for over a year. That's why they're moving everything over.
Right.
But they're like, oh, well, they're not Stephanie, so sorry. So I'm like, I guess that's a good thing, but it's just crazy the lag time. And
Right.
I've seen it. I mean, I've came from big banks where, you know, and it's not easy bringing relationships. People get comfortable. You know,
Right.
I had a customer tell me one time, they're like, you know, moving my banking relationship is like going to the dentist. He's like, I don't want to do it. But the minute that they do and realize how seamless it is
Right.
on their end, we do everything. We attempt to do it and kind of take it off of their hands. They're like, I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, because when I was in the bigger banks, it takes 8 weeks.
Right.
You know, especially when people need to move money.
Yeah.
Their business doesn't stop. It's not, you know, it doesn't close the same way banking hours do. It just, it gives me a relief because I'm constantly trying to do my best to over deliver for my clients.
Right.
And so it's nice to see that with this bank.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
We didn't talk about this, but I'm putting you on the spot. So, what would you say are the top 5 questions a person should ask their bank before entering into a bank relationship with them?
So, how does this process work?
Okay.
You know, what do I need as far as services and what services will help me with my cash flow?
Okay.
Those are usually ones I never hear.
Okay.
Usually they tell you what kind of products they need. You know, what are your overall objectives and goals in the banking as far as no one ever asks that. You know, they don't know where the bank's going. So
that's a good. Now tell me, that's interesting. Why is that an important question?
Because sometimes the banks have different mindset or different objectives down the road that might not align with the clients. You know, sometimes, you know, the bankers are saying yes, you know, yes ma'am, yes sir, but not realizing down the road it's going to impact them.
Now, and I'm going to tell you, I want to interrupt your countdown.
Yeah.
But that is such an important point because there's a story that one of my clients dealt with. So he became my client as a result of this. But he's in this relationship with a bank. He owns hotels. Okay, and he's got 3 or 4 hotels. The bank has all of his cash management. They have all of his deposits. They have everything. He thinks he has this great relationship with this banker. This banker takes him to play golf. They go out to lunch. He calls him on his birthday. It's just wonderful, right?
Right.
Okay, and you know, he's been doing this great business. Now, the goals and objectives of that bank is to get out of the hotel
Exiting.
business.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Now, they tell everybody but
The client until they're like, you have 10 days to leave. Yeah.
I've
seen that. That's why that's an important piece to it. It's because of that very fact.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And people don't realize that a bank will tell you to leave and take your money with you.
Yes. Especially when they've changed those. And
Absolutely.
so no one ever asks about the bank's overall objectives.
Yeah.
Next one is, who do I reach after hours? Because usually somebody will be like, oh, 1-800 number, and then it's someone either not even in the bank, it's some call center or overseas, and now they end up getting angry, you know, upset, because they're getting kind of a circle around, and at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, reach out to your banker tomorrow. So it's who can I reach after hours?
Okay, that's a good one.
That's one that I don't hear at all. And, you know, another one would be, you know, how can I have availability to view my stuff online? But when I do have an issue or if I'm looking for a loan, who do I contact? Because sometimes it's not the same person.
That's another excellent.
So
yeah, and I would think another question, number 6, would be if I bring a loan request to you and you can't do that loan.
Yes.
Who can you refer me
to?
Yes. Right. And most banks would be like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. They'll give the elevator speech.
Right.
They don't know anything else about
it. These are the real services you need,
yeah.
Especially if you're in, you know, if you're in business, period, or certainly if you're in commercial real estate. And if you're not asking those questions, then you are doing yourself a disservice, because that relationship with that bank and that banker can be the difference between your success and failure sometimes.
Absolutely. It's like treat a new client like a first date. You want to ask the questions up front to know if that relationship's going to work out overall.
Absolutely.
And so I'll ask unique questions where sometimes clients are like, this is it's just going to be the treasury service. And I'm like, yeah, but I need to know and understand what your overall objectives are, because I don't want to be surprised, or I don't want you to be surprised if maybe there'll be a disruption.
Right.
But to also let you know that with any disruption comes options that I can offer you or extend to you. So I'm not just stuck with the services and products that we have to offer, but we also have extensions to that. And so a lot of them are surprised, because it's always about the bank, the banker, and focusing on that without telling them, hey, there's outside solutions if we can't fit your needs.
Right. Well, man, I tell you, this has been a great discussion.
Yeah, well, it has been.
And it's I enjoy the fact that we can provide this information to our audience. I guarantee you, there's probably a large portion of our audience that everything we talked about is brand new. Stephanie Dano, Origin Bank. Definitely a pleasure having you on with us.
Thank you. This was great.
And definitely want to have you back and, talk about some ways that we can help clients with regards to their goals and some of those things. So we'll talk about that at another time. But thank you for being a part of our show today. Thank you for supporting the Capital Playbook. Remember, if you don't know the game, you can't win.
Exactly.
Right? So you got to know the player and the game. But let's go out and get it done so that we can all win. But thank you for joining our show today.
Thank you.